It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, June 6th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's deep into the scouting combine, talking to prospects that are there.
Happy days.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ is on his way to the NHL Scouting Combine as you're probably watching this, or is already there even, could be. And so we are going to talk about Carter Amico and Brady Peddle, two of the approximately 90 guys who were on the official list of NHL prospects that'll be at the combine. So if there's any like Flyers news that we haven't covered yet, we're going to get to that on the Monday show when we recap the combine with Russ. It'll be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to hear what you have to bring back from the day.
I'm excited to find out, all about it.
Yeah. Plus, we're going to get to your poll results on contract priorities, which we kind of cut off the results after the Noah Cates deal was signed earlier in the week, given that kind of changed what the results might have been. So we're going to talk about that as well. Carter Amico is a 6'5", 234-pound right-handed defenseman. So right away, your head's going to turn a little bit, right?
Of course, yeah. He's a big guy who could skate. He's a good puck retrieval guy. Definitely a defensive defenseman. A guy who could be a shutdown guy. A guy who, has physical aggression, could seal guys off on the glass. He does a lot of things right. His first pass is good. So there's a lot there. He's got the size. He's got this frame. He also is injury prone.
Right. So that's the thing. So he has been on the National Team Development Program squad in the USHL. Ostensibly, he will be next year. The following year, he is slated to go to Boston University. So very strong program coming from the development program into BU. That is high caliber there. And I think originally he was projected as a first round pick.
Yeah, he was in my first round for a while until the injuries kept reoccurring. Yeah.
Right. So in November, he had a season-ending injury to his knee, and so has not played since then. And that is what's kind of pushed him into high second round territory here, which gives the Flyers, who have a cajillion picks in that zone, an opportunity to maybe take a swing at him. And I think if the Flyers only had one second round pick, I would not use it on a guy like him. But, again, to your point with the injury history here, and you're not sure what the recovery is going to look like. The good news is that with that longer development path that I talked about, we've got time to figure it out. And so if the Flyers have 2 or even 3 of those second round picks, maybe you take a gander at it here.
Yeah. And it looks like his injury was a broken kneecap, according to Central Maine. So that's a little bit more than just a knee injury, because just to give you, an example, players who have had that before, some of them have played in the NHL, and some of them weren't the same, even if they played in the NHL. So that's the thing with that injury.
Right. So we'll see what he does in the physical tests at the combine. We'll talk about it when you get back, Russ. But I think that's he's the kind of player that you want to take a closer look
Yeah,
at
sure.
the combine for that very
Yes.
reason, right?
Yeah, and he'll be at the combine, they'll talk to him. You can see what he looks like physically, and then you can kind of decide. But yeah, if it's with like your third, second round pick, if he happens to be there, why not? I mean, if he's fully overcome this, you could have a heck of a defenseman down the line. But just know that, yeah, the development period is going to be longer with him now.
Yeah, and I think that's okay, given
Yeah,
the kind of stable of bigger guys the Flyers have
correct.
started to draft in
Yeah.
their blue line picks. I mean, Spencer Gill is a huge guy
Yep.
as well that they've already signed. Now, as far as, what's appealing about him, when you look at Carter's play, he's, despite that size, extremely mobile.
Hmm.
No, and there's a lot of guys who are that age, he just turned 18 in March, who don't really know how to use their bodies yet in that way. He does.
He
He
does.
100% does. I
Yeah,
think
he's not awkward or gorky.
Mhm. Yeah. So he's extremely physical. He can throw his size around. So he's gonna make really strong hits, but he can also use some of the skill he has. Like, he can break up plays, he backs
Hmm.
really hard. He may not be like, he can skate really well. He may not be the fastest, but he can skate very well and back check and get where he needs to be.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I've seen him. They played against BC. He looked good early in the year, and that saw him at the Fall Classic. I like him, but and I had him as a first rounder. I mean, why? Of course, he'd be a first rounder with all this. But now you kind of have to, temper your expectations and kind of see.
Yeah, I do wonder what his skating is going to be like, and I think that's
Yeah,
gonna
we
be
don't
a
know.
huge it's gonna be a huge test for him, again, just because it has been in the past very strong.
Hmm.
And, I think that a lot of guys that size can even stand to improve their skating, without injury in terms
Yeah.
of improving their stride technique and figuring out
Oh
how to
yeah, he was
use
going to
that.
need work even if he never got
Yeah,
hurt. So now it's
right.
like, okay, we got to see now.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's pretty strong on breakouts. He's good
Hmm.
in the transition, and I think that again, for a lot of guys this size, they're not as good at the two-way aspect of the game. But he does have some offensive flashes, and I think that he can be an effective puck distributor
Hmm.
at times, but he does make mistakes under pressure, and that was the one note that I saw consistently
Could
from
be because of
scouting
age,
reports on
though.
him.
I mean, he is
Yeah.
young, and so you figure with all the other stuff, I felt like he had a pretty good handle on when to be in the offense, when to go back on D. He never really seemed to go too deep on offense. Most of the time, he seemed to be like that safety guy, safety valve guy, anyhow.
Yeah, and I think with a guy like him, you know, I mean, obviously you've seen him play more directly than I have given the injury this year that he wasn't really available to play, for
Right.
the national team, in tournaments and stuff like that, unfortunately. But I do think that he's a guy that you really need to kind of see where he's at in terms of what is causing those mistakes, and see how fixable they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. Is you have to see. Um, I think everything I saw looked good and was fixable, but
Mhm.
now nobody's going to see how he skates.
Right,
You're just
right,
not.
and
So now
and
you're
that's
taking a leap of faith. You're going to listen to the medicals, and yeah, you're going to have to decide.
right, and I think that, when you look at, again, the Flyers are just in such a unique situation here, looking at the amount of second rounders that they have available, here, that I just think that there's a distinct possibility that they could take a risk on him. I could also see him just completely dropping out of the second round as well, 'cause it'll just really depend on
I
this
don't think in
physical
this
activity.
draft. I think in this draft, because I think there'll be a point of like, let's say 48, 49, where everybody's kind of got their next guy off the board. And then they're like, look at this guy. Like, remember what we thought
Mhm.
about this guy? Maybe we just roll the dice here.
Yeah, and, like, that's like I said, that's why the Flyers are just in such a unique position here,
Yeah,
with the picks that they have. Why not? Literally, why
that's
not?
what I say. Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah. So his ceiling could be a second pairing guy,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, it's
So
possible.
there's something to that. And so presuming they don't trade away the bulk of those second round picks,
Right.
let's go for it and see what happens with
Yeah,
him. And
I'd be
and
happy
I
to
think
have him in the fold.
yeah, and I think BU is an excellent training ground for a
No
guy
doubt.
like him.
Yeah, it'll be
So
fine.
well, another guy that's at the combine is Brady Peddle, and he is someone who is maybe a little further down in the draft, but also a defenseman with a lot of potential. And we are going to talk about him coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I just realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
All right, on Monday's show, like I said, we are going to do a full recap of the NHL Scouting Combine with all the on-site reports from Russ. Plus, we'll have our new nemesis of the week and a new poll question that hopefully will not be negated by something that the Flyers do
You just never
over
know.
the. You never know, though. Maybe we did it. Maybe it was us. But we'll talk about those poll results later in the show today. Brady Peddle is a left-handed defenseman who is, smaller than Carter at 6'3", so
Small.
still a big guy,
Yeah.
203 pounds, and he has been playing for the Waterloo Black Hawks in the USHL, but is a Michigan State commit for 26-27. So he's still got one more year. He's going to play in the USHL before going to Michigan State. Again, very strong college
Oh, yeah.
programs for both of these defensemen that we're talking about on
Could
today's
have
show.
Gavin McKenna there. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I think what's interesting about him is that he was only ranked by Central Scouting. Like nobody as of now really has him on their list, and I wonder like what the combine is going to do for him because he was ranked 86th for North American skaters on that Central Scouting list, which kind of puts him in the third or fourth round, right?
Yeah. I lost touch with Brady Peddle. It wasn't that he didn't write or didn't keep. No, I'm kidding. It's just sometimes it happens. I go to the Fall Classic and I try and revisit a lot of my reports, and I just lost track of him. And then I saw, oh look, he's at the Scouting Combine. Let me revisit Brady Peddle, and so I did.
Hmm.
And he was playing top pair when I saw him for Waterloo, and I liked his puck retrievals. I thought his clearing off the glass was really good. I liked the way with his size, he could seal off guys on the glass and get the puck away from him. I thought he was smart clears. He played on the PK, and I looked at his numbers on Instat, and I see that, 61% puck battles won, 1.58 hits per game, 16 minutes a game, played, peak 214 on the penalty kill. Really good numbers. Maybe had no, actually wasn't even a few too many penalties. He was good. He was really disciplined. So there is something here. I don't think he has much offense. But that's
Right.
fine. I think he's another one of these really good puck moving guys who could play defense. And so I think he's going to get drafted. I don't know where. I think you might be right around somewhere between 4 and 7. That does seem to be, what might happen for him. And yeah, he's just an interesting guy because, when I saw him, he was 6'3", 191. So let's say he rolls into the combine and he's 6'3", 200. and I don't know, he looks great in everything. You know, if he does some good interviews, teams are going to be like, add him to the board. Or if they already had him, give it another check. Like, now we're seeing more than we saw even at the beginning of the year. Because I didn't see as much that I needed at the beginning of the year. So, we'll see what he looks like as far as like his summer training that he started.
Right. And, he is a very good skater.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for somebody his size, everybody can always get better, but he is a good skater already, technique wise. And, like you said, he's very aggressive. He's an energy
Yes.
guy, but he does have that puck moving skill to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other aspect of his game is that he's not like a strong offensive guy in terms of he's putting pucks in the net or making, incredible passes, right? That like
Right.
none of that
That's
is going to
not.
happen
No.
with Brady. But I think the thing that does he has a very heavy shot. And what that does is create the kind of defenseman that we all love to see, where he'll take strong shots from the point or
Mm-hmm.
just from distance, and he can create rebound opportunities. And I think that's the kind of offense that you're going to get from him. And there's something to be said for that. Like somebody that can power the puck net front and either give a forward a chance to redirect it or have it bounce off the boards in the right way to give a rebound opportunity to somebody else on the forward side of things. And you do need that as part of your blue line rotation.
Yeah, I mean, and his dad was a scout for the Columbus Blue Jackets, still is an amateur scouting consultant for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, they may have, I'm sure, not may, they have him on the radar, but whether they would want, the team that his dad's consulting for to draft him is a whole other thing. We've gone through all that. You know, Mark Gregg was an example. Would he want his son to be, so, the Flyers didn't draft him, right? So getting back to Brady, though, yeah, there's definitely something here. And because his dad has some, knowledge of the NHL, a lot of it, and amateur scouting and everything, I'm sure he's very well trained. I've not interviewed him. He's on my board to interview. I'm definitely going to talk to him unless I'm eating a sandwich. Then maybe I miss him. But that's how it works at the combine sometimes. You have to listen out. It's kind of like, here's this group. Okay, I see when he's going to go. Okay, and then you don't know when they're going to be done, and you have to wait for him to cool down like racehorses, and so it's a whole thing. And so it is possible to miss some guys. I've missed a few, but I'm going to try and get Brady because I like his story, and I saw a little bit of him playing, and I think there's something there.
Yeah, and something that is interesting about him, we talked about him like not really being a scorer per se,
Yeah.
but the little nugget that makes me reconsider that a little bit, and that's why I talked about his ability to create rebounds and create chances for other players. So you look at his regular season this year in 62 games, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points, right? So that's in
Mm-hmm.
62 games, 10 points. He played 15 games in the playoffs, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
Same number of points
Mm-hmm.
in a quarter of the games. So, that says like he can step it up when he needs to in the playoffs, first off, and that he's building that offensive skill. And especially when you look that he will be going to Michigan State in a couple of years. Again, it'll be a longer development path, but that's always the case with third, fourth rounders. But the potential is there, and you could see improvement over the course of his game. And that's a very important indicator when you're going to draft somebody.
Yeah, I think that's something. And he was born in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. So I haven't
Yeah,
seen any of the
small town.
yeah, I haven't seen any of the footage from when he played there. Maybe he was offensive then. I don't know. I just thought it was a fun name. And so, but yeah, I certainly would
I
give
mean, got a lot of
consideration.
points at the 16
He did,
year, but
but we don't know about before then. Even Elite Prospects doesn't know. Maybe I'll
Right.
ask him.
Yeah, maybe you will. But I think like that's the kind of thing you have to dig into with a guy like him is
Yeah,
like, what's the progression? Where does he see himself?
right.
Right? What's his role moving forward? And how does he think he's getting to the NHL versus what a scout thinks is his path to the NHL? Because I think they may be different answers here.
Yeah, sometimes they are. Yeah.
So I think he's a guy that maybe you don't sleep on. And I
I wouldn't
think
sleep on
that
him. No way.
no, is going to Michigan State, no way. And so I do think he's somebody that the Flyers can and should consider here. And you can't go wrong with another larger defenseman, of course, in all of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt, Rachel.
Yeah. So very excited to give our report from the combine when you get back. And we will do that on the Monday show. We've already covered 39 of the 90 listed skaters on the list that were invited to the combine. We don't know if 100% of them are showing up,
Yeah,
but
usually 100% does not show.
right, but 39 of 90 is pretty good. We will continue to add to that list, and we'll get a lot of more names covered next week with all your notes from the combine. So
Yep.
excited to do that. In the meantime, we are going to talk about the Flyers contract priorities and what your thoughts were on that coming up next. All right. So on Monday's show, when we put out our poll question of the week, we asked what the biggest priority you thought the Flyers should have in their contracts to get done. And the options were Noah Cates, Cam York, a free agent center, or a free agent defenseman, or none of the above, and tell us why. And we decided to pull the data right after the Kate signing
Yeah.
on Tuesday, just because it would skew the results a little
Right.
bit here and kind of react to that in a window of time that no
Hmm.
longer exists. And as my Doctor Who faves would say, it's timey-wimey, wibbly wobbly. Anyway, looking at these results that we had prior to the Kate signing, the number one result here was a free agent center at 45% of the vote. Are you surprised by that?
No. No, I'm not. Everybody's kind of fixated on it. Everybody's thinking center, even in the draft. So no, everybody's focused on center.
Yeah, and I think people thought that the Kate's contract was gonna be a given at some point, and so the attention should
Yeah, I
be
think there's something to
somewhere
that.
else. I do. I see kinda see it both ways. Like, Dave, commented, "Need to get a decent center for Matvey Michkov. Kate's contract will get resolved." On the other hand, I can't imagine having Urson and Fedotov as the tandem again. So there was, like, a goalie situation here, which
Right.
we kinda didn't include here because it wasn't really a contract issue as
Right.
much as a personnel. This is a
Correct.
trade or a personnel issue.
Right.
I thought more, but I do agree with it. I also see, well, let's just get the Kate's contract done and out of the way so we can focus on the free
Yeah.
agent center. And so that, and knowing how much you're paying for Kate's already. That is my perspective on it. That I thought Kate's should have been the first choice
Yep.
just because then you just get it done. You know
Yep.
the dollar amount and you know what you have to work with. And that's why I think Noah Cates was the second highest percentage here at 27%, which is his number, which
Right.
I thought was interesting.
That is.
um, here, but and kind of funny. And Brian said that they have invested a lot of time into Cates, and he's now one of the better defensive forwards in the league. They need to lock him up long term. And I don't think 4 years is long term,
It's
but 4
longer.
years is
It's
long
long
enough.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love it. So, and as we said earlier in the week when we talked about the contract itself. So, I think those two being the highest absolutely checks out. Cam York came in at 19%, and a free agent defenseman came in at 9%. And I think, in the priority order here, I think that's correct. I
Hmm.
absolutely think that's correct. So I think our listeners had it pretty much spot on
Yeah, I do too.
with in terms of the prioritizing the center side of things
Yep.
versus the defenseman side of things here. And when you talk about the defenseman side of things, Jeff said with all the talk about centers, the defense gets ignored. Flyers need help on the back end and in goal. There are some offer sheet candidates that could help. you could also draft well and be patient, which I think are both excellent points there.
Yeah, no, they're excellent points. I mean, we did talk about getting like a lesser defenseman because you're going to need probably somebody in case Risto's, Risto.
Right. Exactly. Jason also said, in my opinion, defensemen other than York is a priority. The reason being the Flyers seem to be investing a lot of draft capital in centermen. York to me is man, no offense. Look to shore up the defense in the short term. So clearly his choice was a free agent defenseman here.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If there's the right guy, sure.
Yeah.
You saw they already started to get locked up even before free agency here, and a few more might get locked up before then. You don't get a lot of choices on defense anymore in free agency.
No. And that's where, drafting and developing is the way
Yeah.
to go here. And, to Jeff's point that we
Yes.
just talked about, in that and we've talked, this week about, and on this show, about some potential defensemen
Mm-hmm.
in the draft that would be good to add to the Flyers prospect pool here, as the pipeline is a little thin
A little
on
bit.
that side for the Flyers. It's not dire, but it's thinning.
Yeah.
Especially with who we've got coming up the pipeline, who they've already signed, versus what they could potentially have in this year's draft, or in the next couple of drafts after that. Now, the none of the aboves were very vocal in this one, which fair,
Yeah,
absolutely
I
fair.
get it.
Yeah, I think the goaltending question is a huge one, and
Big.
I do not begrudge anybody focusing on that entirely, because it's been a problem. And I think that we've talked about how the Flyers don't have goalies that are going to steal games for you,
Right.
and that's the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they were one of the worst tandems in the league. What doesn't make them bad? It's just it wasn't good. And so, is there room for improvement? A lot. Yeah. So I get why people would want that.
Yeah. And so, besides the goaltending question, which again, many people mentioned that as their number one focus, Frank said, none of the above, none of this is essential this offseason. I'd love Cates and York back, but only on reasonable deals. Neither is a difference maker you overpay for. 100% agree.
Agreed.
And we have not seen them overpay, at least
No,
for Cates. As of recording, maybe Cam York is signed. We don't know,
we don't know.
but I think
He
that
could be
it's
surfing.
certain.
We don't know.
We just don't know. But Frank also says, no big UFA makes sense right now. Get back to me this time next summer. 100% agree.
I don't have your
100%
number,
agree.
so I can't get back to you. But okay.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach.
Yes.
That you kind of wait for that big UFA to kind of complete the picture here for the Flyers in a lot of ways, and there just isn't that player out there right now
Right.
that would be, unless there's somebody who wants to be in on it before the Flyers get to that point,
Yeah, there could be.
which is possible, but not entirely likely. So
Right.
we'll see. Archangel commented the most essential thing for them is to not overpay or give out bad contracts this offseason. They're not going to fix this in a year and shouldn't handcuff themselves later. And
Agree.
agree. 100% agree. And I think that, as we've said on the show, Danny Briere has been doing a much better job with these contracts and paying people what they're worth.
Yeah.
Thus far this offseason. And I'm pretty pleased with it so far. And we'll see moving forward if these opportunities arise, for a big free agent signing, if he overpays beyond what a typical necessary overpay is, right? And you have to
Yeah.
parse that out pretty carefully. But I think that there's a reasonable overpay and there's a ridiculous overpay.
No question. There's room. That could be in there. Yes.
Yeah. All right. That will do it for today's show. We will be back Monday to talk all things NHL Scouting Combine and have a new poll question and nemesis of the week. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions or prospects you want us to do a deep dive on, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale with NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.